I think it was all Rob Schneider's fault.
The soundtrack is just incredible.
Very, very artistic.
Judge Dredd is trying to enter the facility.
He got the robot eyes.
Talk about Shaft.
He can do it.
Terrifically they did with the resources that they had.
Karl Urban is, in fact, Papa Palpatine.
Injection death. All right, fine, I admit it.
He's swell.
I'm stupid.
Whee!
Broadcasting live from inside Mega City 1. This is The Blah. In this episode, everybody dies via judgment from Judge Dredd. I'm your host, Judge Mulverine, along with my fellow judges, Judge Higo.
Hey.
And Judge C-Lab.
What up?
That's right, folks. We're sitting in the heart of Sector 13 in Mega City 1, and today we are going to be talking about what is absolutely a cult classic now, the 2012 film Dredd, starring Karl Urban, written by our new friend of the show, Alex Garland.
Dude's legit.
Totally legit. And I would like to say that this movie is so good, I would rather stop doing the podcast so I could watch it again.
This movie's so good, you're going to rate it twice.
I'm going to rate it twice. It's that good. I wish I was watching it again. I watched it last night, and I was like, this is so good. And I should watch it in the morning instead of doing the podcast.
What makes it so good, in your view?
Everything. It's just gritty. The story is great. Nothing spectacularly new or different, but the execution of said story is really, really good. The dialogue is fantastic. The interplay between the characters, the way that he wrote the women in the film, the effects, costuming, sound design is unbelievable. The music is just incredible. I just love every aspect of it. There's not a single thing I don't like about it, except that there's only one movie, and it's 8 years past now.
It's like got Riddick disease.
It does have Riddick disease.
Something similar. There apparently is a TV show, Mega City 1, in the works, though.
Yeah, should we go there first?
Yeah.
I think that what you said is right. I think this property suffers from Riddickitis. You know, I watched a video that said that, you know, the movie is an action movie, it's violent, and it's about comic books. And those three things, if I'm remembering that right, those three things leave a lot of potential audience members out. And while I think that's true, you know, comic book movies are so huge right now. And this came out when Marvel was really quite ramped up. I think Avengers had come out the same year. So it's sort of puzzling that it didn't do better. But I think that, you know, when you have a movie like Avengers or any of the Marvel films playing and, you know, people were getting pretty whipped up about all that, you know, to have a comic book film come out that it's essentially adapted from a heavy metal style comic magazine, you know, you're going to kind of get left in the corner with the rest of the dust bunnies.
Yeah, especially with an R rating.
Especially with an R rating, yeah. You guys have any thoughts on why this didn't do more?
Yeah, I have a theory.
Let's hear it.
I think it was all Rob Schneider's fault.
Oh.
People just had a bad taste in their mouth from the Stallone version, and they were like, why the fuck are they making another one of these? You know, except for like the hardcore fans, which, you know, I, for one, I don't know if I would say I'm a hardcore Judge Dredd fan, but I definitely was a fan already. So I got it, you know, but
yeah,
maybe nobody else did.
It's a good point.
Well, I actually read that somewhere, or possibly a couple places, that people thought that it was some sort of extension from the 95 Stallone film. Sorry, Rob Schneider film.
Co-starring Stallone.
Co-starring Stallone and Sandy Bullock.
Guest starring Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, no, not Sandy Bullock. Diane Lane was in that.
Yeah, right. I was tempted to watch the Stallone movie again in preparation for this, but I just couldn't do it.
I couldn't do it either. I didn't want to sully anything either.
Yeah, I thought it would end up being confusing.
Yeah.
We'll have to save that one for another time.
Yeah, I think both of you guys are onto something there. I think one of the more interesting kind of concepts that is pretty obvious nowadays, but maybe wasn't so obvious earlier, you know, 5-10 years ago is like the idea of timing with like tech startups and stuff. Like you can have the best idea in the world, but if it's the environment isn't ready or the tech isn't ready yet, it just won't happen, even if it's like the greatest thing ever. And then someone comes along 10 years later and does the same thing and makes billions of dollars. And
or not even.
yeah, or not even. But like I kind of feel like an R-rated comic book movie, like this was too early and a Deadpool hit the mark at the right time. And obviously they're very, very different movies, but so I mean it's an interesting analogy where, you know, a perfectly good movie might be released out of sync with, you know, where things are at societally or just where things are at technologically. Like I think, you know, despite the fact that Avatar is a bit of a turd, the fact that James Cameron was working on it for 25 years until the CGI was up to where he felt it was good enough, you know, is another example where the CGI tech needs to be good enough. So, you know, I don't know. It's a good film for sure. I don't think I have quite as much like obsession about it necessarily, but I think similar to Riddick, it's the more you watch it, the more you fall in love with it, kind of like listening to an old album and you kind of fall in love with the thing as a whole. But the fact that this is an indie film, I think, is really quite a strong feature of it too. Yeah,
and really more of a British film than an American film.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know, just to kind of step back a little bit, and hopefully Jarhigo will forgive me for this, but just to throw out a similar comparison to Batman Begins, like that is not an R-rated movie, but Batman Begins is a dark movie, you know, and it definitely did not follow this sort of the tropes of the previous superhero films. Like the original 89 Batman had, you know, it was dark, but it also had like a kind of a comic kind of goofy quality to it in the way that only Tim Burton can deliver. You know, Spider-Man was very good, but very, you know, light and bright in that kind of Marvel-y way. So it's interesting that that movie came out in 2005 before the Hulk, which kind of, and Iron Man, which kicked off, you know, the whole Marvel thing. And I guess, I don't know, at the time, I don't think, did Batman Begins do very well? I don't think it did very well in the very beginning, did it? Were people stoked about that? I feel it was a similar situation because like that movie came out coming off the heels of Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, which were terrible and marginal, you know? So there's a similarity there, and it's interesting.
Yeah. Jimmy Google just said it doubled its money, which is kind of in line with what you were saying, where it wasn't a huge box office return, whereas The Dark Knight was a $1 billion movie.
Right.
So yeah, you're not wrong for sure. That sounds right. It was still a little early in the edgy, dark environment kind of subject matter space for sure. And I mean, a Batman's always going to do better than a Judge Dredd just based on the fact that people know Batman, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, and the property has way more cachet than Judge Dredd. Most people don't even know who Dredd is, you know?
Yeah, and those that do know Sylvester Stallone as Dredd. So back to Benny's point, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I was watching that 2000 AD documentary yesterday, and I feel like, you know, Batman getting good actually sort of coincided with a lot of people from 2000 AD going over to DC.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, there's a whole part about how, you know, like 2000 AD sort of became like the poaching grounds for like more successful American comics. And people would leave because they were getting offered more money, you know, to go do art or stories for, you know, DC and Vertigo and what have you.
And getting to work on properties that they were obsessed with as kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I had never realized how influential 2000 AD as a comic was. It really ties back to our conversation when we were talking about The Fifth Element and how, you know, I mentioned it was like the sci-fi I was always promised because I kind of came up with Heavy Metal Magazine and the opening couple of, you know, bits to this documentary about 2000 AD, which if I can find it on YouTube or something, I'll link it in the show notes. If not, there'll be the name of it. It's like, yeah, I could actually look it up right now.
Is that an ejection death?
No, I just want to make sure that
No, the ejection is when you don't tell anybody and you just kind of hit the button and fly out of the plane.
That's it. So the documentary is called 2000 AD. It's called Future Shock: The Story of 2000 AD. So, you know, one of the earliest kind of parts to the film is talking about how these dudes in Britain wanted to make edgier works because the mainstream stuff was too vanilla in the UK, and there was some social upheaval at that time, and they looked to heavy metal as kind of an inspiring thing. So it's kind of like a direct step from the heavy metal, Mobius and Giger and all of those various European artists to kind of a more punk rock 2000 AD, and Judge Dredd was one of the main, attractions of 2000 AD. So it was a really interesting documentary, and it really tied some threads together as to why and how heavy metal and 2000 AD are like responsible for pretty much anything of interest in the non-saccharine, superhero universe. All of the Watchmen stuff and Alan Moore stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
It's really remarkable just how influential it was.
Well, that magazine was, and I mean, full disclosure, I don't know a lot about it. I didn't read 2000 AD. I don't.
Same.
I knew who Judge Dredd was, just I think from like other comic fans that had mentioned it, and then
Anthrax.
Yeah, exactly. Who's in the documentary? The dude from Anthrax.
Yeah, it was totally Anthrax.
Nice. But it very much seems to me like that was they were like comic creators, like musicians' music, like that same idea. Like that was the book that all the comic book creators read, and kind of, even if they were professionals working, were still like, oh man, I'd love to do work with those guys, like super respected by their peers, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for a message from our sponsor.
Folks, we'll be back to the madness in a minute after these words from our sponsor.
Today's episode is sponsored by us.
Folks, we wanted to take a break from the show and just thank everybody so much for tuning in. You can always rate us, review us, wherever you get your podcasts if you want to support the show further. And you can also tell somebody to check out the show. And we would urge you to do so because it helps us grow the show and make the show better.
Yeah, it really helps. We really appreciate it. And also, we're loving chatting with you guys and gals on Facebook and other stuff. So, if you see anything funny or see anything that you think that we'd like, shoot it our way, because it might be a point that we missed when we talked about a topic, like we had with the Rise from Papa Palpatine episode. One of our listeners shot in a Reddit thread that we missed, or even just like funny stuff that you see, and you can post it to Facebook or tag us in Instagram or something. We'd love to see what you guys are enjoying as well.
And now, back to the mayhem. So talking about 2000 AD, one thing that I thought was really interesting that I just wanted to throw in was that magazine has been ongoing since the late 70s, all the way till now. So in essence, that makes Dredd an extremely long-running comic property. And I think it's cool that it's still going, and I think that it's cool that so many artists have either flocked to go draw on 2000 AD or cut their teeth there and then went elsewhere. And that's all the contribution I have for 2000 AD.
Yeah, I don't think I ever read it, but it was really fascinating to learn about it. And it was also interesting to be reminded that Dredd ages in real time in the comic. So he's like 70 years old now in the comic, whereas he was obviously like, in his 30s in the beginning. So that's kind of a cool dynamic too.
That's interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually bought a few Dredd comics back in the day at the recommendation of, I Am the Law. The Anthrax song. I was just like in the comic store, and like, there happened to be like maybe 10 or 15 of them or something, like, not brand new, but like, somebody had traded them in or whatever. So I scooped them all up and read it. 2000 AD or Dredd? I don't remember a hell of a lot, but it was cool. Dredd. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I've read a couple of the short, like I think I read Dredd versus Aliens, which was kind of interesting, and a few others. But I never really got super, super deep in the world. But after watching that documentary, I really want to check it out. I am the law. So there's a couple of quotes from the original creator, John Wagner, and Alex Garland in reference to the movie that we're talking about today that I thought were quite interesting. One was talking about, when John Wagner was coming up with a story, he would always have two major, go-to tentpole must-haves, which was Dredd is the good guy, and the other one is Dredd is the bad guy. Dredd is the villain, which makes sense when he says it, but I hadn't really considered it as concisely as he put it. So I thought that was kind of interesting because, you root for him, but at the same time, like, he does some pretty evil shit, and some of his decision-making is like, wow, dude, give the guy a break, and then meanwhile he's like executing people left and right.
There was a little short doc at the end of my copy of Dredd. They were talking about this sort of the main characters are Dredd and Mega City 1, which I thought was really interesting. And how Dredd was sort of the, like you said, like the tent pole that always kind of stayed the same in the story. And then there was just whatever wackiness that whichever writer was working on the book could come up with, you know, you could pull out of the city and inject it or rather kind of wrap it around Dredd, and then there's your story for that particular issue or week or whatever. You know,
he's like a freight train. He just never stops. He's always kind of on the same track.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, actually.
And kind of on that, Garland, who was evidently like a big fan growing up in Britain, was saying like, if you have a fascist state and the hero is a fascist cop, there's built-in satire, which it kind of makes a ton of sense in a way. It's kind of like the British creators taking the piss out of the, like, you know, all-American hero cop trope and kind of really taking the piss out of it and turning it up to 11 and making him into kind of a fascist. And for whatever reason, it resonated with everybody, you know, reading it. And it's kind of interesting that the character is so beloved considering how much of a prick he is, you know?
Yeah, they see their satire of Americana in general seemed to be a big part of the book, and, you know, definitely funny. And also left out of the movie, which I liked.
Yeah. I mean, Dredd would fit right in with Dennehy in First Blood as, like, you know, the prick-faced dude who just won't let it go and just has to push it all the way to the end.
Yeah.
Dude, now there's a superpowers team up for you right there. Will Teasel and Judge Dredd.
I would totally watch that.
Yeah, right?
Would it be Stallone Dredd, or would it be Karl Urban Dredd?
Jesus, I didn't even
we're
think
getting
of
really
that.
close here.
I think it would be a Karl Urban Dredd and a Brian Dennehy Teasel hunting Stallone Rambo.
Yes.
And I think the outcome of First Blood would be different if Dredd was after him.
Oh my God, yes.
Maybe it could be Karl Urban Dredd with Rob Schneider as a sidekick.
Oh my God, dude. So you're saying Karl Urban as Dredd, Will Teasel, and then Rob Schneider as Urban Dredd's sidekick, hunting Rambo.
Maybe now that Dennehy's no longer with us, rest in peace, maybe Rob Schneider could play Teasel?
Why not?
I think I'm dead for even going there.
It was funny, but yeah, you're dead too.
Stretching the silly putty a little too far there.
Whoa.
I like it.
I am the law. Just before we move on from the thought too far, a quick thought on the satirical aspect. Like, that's totally true. Like, when I read the comic books, I remember finding them to be kind of funny. You know, like Dredd's adherence to the books and his sort of, you know, crotchetiness or whatever you want to call it, like, came across to me as like being kind of funny. You know, like, so there was something about it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, like you're saying, like the interplay between the satire and his sort of like straight-laced.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't really come through much in this movie. I mean, it definitely does. There are definitely some great one-liners that sort of, you know, show that side of the story. But I think in the comic book, like when I was reading it, I was constantly kind of chuckling because it was, you know, it's just absurd. Like, you know?
Yeah, I think that it's somewhat of a gripe with the hardcore Dredd fans that the satire was kind of missed in this film, but at the same time, I think the sheer relief with this film being so much better than the previous, that they were like, yeah, you know what, it sucks, but like whatever, it's all good. So there's, like you said, there's little sprinklings of it, but I feel you. Like, there's definitely like intentional tongue-in-cheek, like, can you believe the crazy shit we're having Dredd do in the comic, and like people go along for the ride kind of stuff, and it's kind of funny.
Yeah, you know, you described Dredd as being like this sort of freight train, you know, and that's totally true. It's almost like he's like a robot or something, you know, like he's just you know, like nothing computes but the law for him, you know, like there's just no
Right.
There's not a whole hell of a lot of depth there, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't go out of frame. He doesn't go out of frame. It's like he's always within the framework.
Yeah, you know, there's something funny about watching that process unfold. You know, it's just like, oh shit, look what this guy's doing. Oh no, here comes Dredd. You know,
Yeah, and I think that that's kind of what you said better what I was trying to say earlier, Ben. Like in terms of like I meant the city itself, but the satire that goes with that as well. You know what I mean? And then that sort of juxtaposition between that and Dredd. And then I also think that tying it into what we're actually talking about, it would not have worked. I could see it working in terms of like, like the sort of like the billboards and like some of the weird stuff that I've seen from some of the panels in the comics. I haven't seen much, but if you had all that stuff around and then like, the straight-laced Dredd, I could definitely see some comedy there, but I'm glad that they left it the way that it is.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I think it seemed like Garland was, based on some of the reporting out there, that he started with like a really big, broad movie and did 16 revisions of the script and then threw it away because it was too complicated, and then did another version of the movie with another however many versions of the script, and he threw that away too, and then he ended up with like, let's do a simple story to introduce Dredd and keep it tight, short, sharp, and tight, and that's what this was. And I think he saw also that like overcomplicating it or bringing in too much stuff would have been a risky maneuver, so it's fair enough.
Well, it would have been a production nightmare too, to just add all that glitz and backdrop stuff. You'd either have to do it, analog or CGI, and that would have been a lot more work too,
Yeah, and this is before the heyday of, series starting to take off with multi-parters and stuff, so we've touched upon that a bunch in other shows.
And serious money, yeah, totally. But I just wanted to add one more thing, because I do like this topic. Like, I think this is good to talk about. And circling back to kind of where we started was, timing with this particular property, coming out in 2008, and there's, other or 2012, there's other Marvel movies coming out. Avengers came out that year, that sort of thing. It's got an R rating and all of that. Is it ripe for a series now? I think the people would be stoked to watch something like this now,
I think it would definitely fit now,
Yeah.
And Urban's already said he's down to play him more. So, and
Yep.
Garland was saying that he had a trilogy planned. This was kind of the nice popcorn eating setup, and then he was going to go, real hardcore into the whole thing. So,
well, he was going to do an origin story next, and then a story involving Judge Death, who I know nothing about personally.
Yeah, I think in general, the climate for, something a little different is probably here. I think people are more willing to, the comic book thing is kind of in the zeitgeist now. And I think people are more willing to take a chance with a property that is new to them, like something that they haven't seen before. So I think it could do really well.
Yeah, I mean, between Preacher, The Boys, and Watchmen, there's definitely some edgier stuff out now.
No doubt, man. No doubt.
I don't know whether it's worth circling back, but Benny, when you were saying he was really robotic, it brought to mind RoboCop, and I didn't realize just how much Verhoeven lifted from Dredd. Evidently, even like the major quotables were pulled straight from the comic, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I didn't know that. Wow,
interesting. I see it.
I can see it too.
It was definitely fascinating because they are very similar in the sense of, obviously RoboCop's origin is different, but he is very much a like, I am the law, do not resist citizen kind of freight train, so it was just kind of interesting little nugget that was sprinkled into that documentary.
Wow, I really like that.
I am the law.
I am the law. Do you want to shift into the audio and sound stuff? You want to do a transition there, Kev?
Sure. I mean, what was cool to me, well, firstly, the soundtrack is just incredible. The music it's like industrial, it's like synth, it's like heavy metal, all kind of rolled into one, which I love. And Paul Leonard-Morgan, who wrote the score, he injects the right type of music at the right moment. It's just really well done, I think. And I almost feel like at this point we need to come up with kind of like categories for the types of scores, because we've talked about this repeatedly. And sometimes you have a score that's just playing in the background, you're not really noticing it, and it's lending something, it's lending a lot in the sense that you're not noticing it. In this one, it's like it kind of comes in and out, like it's always there and it's always accentuating the action that's on the screen. And then there are times when it'll just come to the forefront and it's like right in your face and you just like, yes, And then other times it kind of drops into the background a little bit, but just really well done. I'm a huge fan of it. I love listening to scores. I have since I was younger, and this one I've been listening to quite a little bit and really enjoying it. It's just that good, man, you know? So what's really great is how, and kind of interesting and different, is how they tied in the slow-mo effect with the music. So they were using Phantom Flex cameras and a couple of other different cameras to achieve that, like, 4,000 frames per second feel with the slow-mo effect. And then what they also did was Paul Leonard-Morgan slowed the music down to match the speed of the cameras, which I just thought was super brilliant, man. And when I say slowed it down, it wasn't like he just went, half speed, eighth speed. Like, he literally slowed it down to like 0.17%, which was the same as the way the frames were rolling out. So, it was like more of a complete package. And it's visually stunning to watch it, and the way that the sound is tied into it just makes it even more full and even more rich, and I absolutely love it. I love watching those scenes. They're fantastic. When they go in for their first bust, they blow the door off and they go in. I mean, there's so much going on in that slow-mo scene, and you get to see all of it in all of its gory detail.
Like, I mean, it's gory, but like the slow-mo aspect for that particular scene, it's just like, it's so beautifully done. And then the music is Vitalik Poison Lips, which is a great track. It's not part of the score, but and hearing that slowed down with all the action is just, it's incredible.
Really incredible.
There was a snippet about how someone stumbled across a Justin Bieber song that was slowed down 1,000 times, and that was like part of the inspiration for slowing this stuff down, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Well, to expound on that, that was actually for Mama's Requiem, which is when she died, and it was an unofficially altered Bieber song that kind of served as the inspiration for the slow-mo kind of theme.
Oh, okay.
I just think the music is fantastic and the sound design is great. I mean, it doesn't just end there. I mean, it's, the motorcycles ripping down the highway with the, you can hear the echo coming off the buildings and the walls, of the cramped city of Mega City 1. And as a side note, the template for that was Johannesburg, South Africa, and they sort of CGI'd in all the block buildings. What the hell are they called? I can't remember this.
Mega blocks.
Yeah, the mega blocks, exactly. So, when he's ripping, down the highway in the motorcycle, it's like you can hear all of that echoing of that motorcycle. It's just all of that stuff, the gunshots, the sounds of the leather, everything. It's like that's what encompasses sound design in a film, and it's just well done and well balanced in this movie in a beautiful way. In addition to the slow-mo stuff that we already talked about with the music, so A++.
Just to comment on that really quick, what you just said, I really loved the design of the Lawmaster motorcycles in this one. Like, it's not necessarily very true to the image of the comic, but like, it fits with the aesthetic they went with for this particular movie, which isn't necessarily a clone of how things looked in the comic, but it's more like in the same spirit. But I just thought those bikes were super cool.
Yeah,
yeah,
I did too, and that's sort of a really great segue into like, kind of the production design, but the way that they sort of, like we touched on in the part with the satire and the comedy, like the way that they made everything very practical in this movie. Like, so if you take a look at the, panels from the comics with like the giant metal eagle on his right shoulder, they still have that, but it's just in the form of armor. So the pad on the right is different than the one on the left, and it's larger and it's got the gold eagle on it. And it was just like a brilliant way to do it. And make it still there, but practical and cool, and really just kind of showing it as a symbol instead of like this giant gaudy symbol, that it didn't need to be like that. I thought that the bike, going back to what you said, had just a super like raw kind of futuristic and industrial kind of look to it, with that very angular cowl on it,
Yeah, and I mean, it still had like the, giant like car-sized tires on it. And, I think they did a really good job of keeping the spirit of the look of Judge Dredd, but not, but in a way that's just more subtle, or I think that probably looks a little better on screen.
That's what I mean. Yeah, exactly. And to that end, actually, Ben, I think that, because I've seen the bike from the comics many times, it would have been really cool to do another kind of, a less garish version of the eagle for the bike as well. They could have done something that was more subtle and added it to the front cowl of the bike, and it would have just given it that extra little kind of touch or nod to the comic or whatever you want to call it. You're like, not like a metal gaudy thing, but just like, like an image on the front.
Right. Yeah. Maybe like like they do like the shark mouth on airplanes. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Maybe something just like airbrushed like that would have been cool. Yeah. That's an interesting thought.
Well, I was actually thinking, that's actually a really cool idea. What I was thinking was just something simple, the way that they did the right shoulder pads. So instead of having like this big gaudy, like metal, kind of eagle on your shoulder, they made it into a pad. It's like, so just do the same idea, but with the bike. So it's like become a symbol. It's kind of like the Superman symbol. Like if Judge Dredd is a superhero, then that eagle symbol symbolizes the Hall of Justice and all of that stuff. So it's like, why not just use that symbol somewhere on the front of the bike? I thought that would be kind of cool.
Yeah. It's interesting that you should bring up the eagle, because there was something I saw somewhere, probably the documentary, that was touching on how, there are three major empires that have had the eagle: the Roman Empire, the Nazi Third Reich, and America, and how it seemed like they were taking the piss out of, the police, American
absolutely
gun-toting police trope with the eagle and stuff. So it's
absolutely, I saw the same thing.
Yeah, it's a super interesting little call out to, to the piss take.
Definitely.
On the styling of Dredd, there was an interesting little nugget where Garland was saying, he brought up 4 of the artists on Dredd, and he said he felt as though he put himself in the shoes of a new artist, and how newer artists, when they come on, take the characters and do their own little spin on it. And so he felt like he was still in keeping with the tradition, but taking his own little spin. So I thought that was a good perspective on it.
Very interesting.
Very cool. I am the law.
So, Higo, you said that you wanted to talk about, or you were mentioning how slow-mo is such a big part of this movie. I just talked about it in the sound design. What do you got for that? Let's go there.
It's such an interesting concept, number one. Like, I'd love to get my hands on some slow-mo. That just, it seems pretty glorious.
Definitely.
But just the way that it was weaved into the movie, and sort of, like Mega City 1 is this really gritty, dark, awful, violent place, but people are doing this drug that sort of like seems to just make time disappear for people, and everything just becomes shimmery and beautiful, and it's like this interesting counterpoint to the otherwise dreary and awful city.
Yeah,
it's like the perfect form of escapism.
Yeah,
it anchors you in a moment.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's almost like the ultimate form of meditation, but it's like drug-induced meditation in a way.
It kind of freezes the moment, but not in a good way. Like in the way that you'd be doing something that you enjoy, or with some people that you really care about. You're like, oh, this is such a great moment. I wish it could go on forever. It's like there is none of that in Mega City 1. It's like it's just horrible shit. So it's sort of an interesting dichotomy that it's not like those great moments that you would want to capture and slow down and have it last forever. It's sort of making a shitty moment in a shitty life kind of great for a couple of minutes or however long it lasts. That was one thing I never got, was how long it actually lasts.
I would get the impression that it was something that, probably didn't last for that long, but seemed like it lasted for a while.
Yeah. Like a nitrous hit or something, it lasts like a minute, but it feels like an eternity kind of thing.
Yeah, something like that, I guess. But I mean, I guess, the simple pleasures would be like, mama in the bathtub, just sort of like,
yeah,
just being like enraptured with like playing with the water, while the slow-mo is kicked in.
I kind of got the vibe of the dude in the back of the van. It's kind of like when you're driving down the road in the summer with your arm out the window and you're kind of like moving your hand up and down, like that kind of, those like simple moments kind of thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I could see how it would become super addictive if it was short in duration.
It would have to be, otherwise you'd go crazy.
Well, that was what I was thinking. I mean, it would have to be short, kind of like if slow-mo lasted an hour, even 15 minutes, my God, you'd be like, Jesus. Like after a while, you'd be like, okay.
I'm done.
I can't do anything because it's all in slow-mo. You like literally wouldn't be able to understand anybody. You wouldn't be able to do anything.
And as a result, they had to come up with a really clever way to communicate it. And as you touched on, Kev, it was like art, like it was very, very artistic and inexperiential. Like you picked up on it straight away, especially like the scene that you were mentioning a minute ago, Ben, with the initial raid where they did those awesome practical effects with the compressed air, with the explosions and the bodies, like, the skin of the bodies rippling and stuff. It was just like a stunning and gorgeous sequence. But at the same time, you realize halfway through being enamored by it that it's like people viciously dying, gory deaths, so it was very well handled.
And that was the great dichotomy of that scene, like Ben said earlier, but, they could have very easily just kind of, made this a throwaway, like slow-mo being something that slows you down and all that, and like they could have really not put the energy into it, but they put a lot of energy into it. And, if you put on a set of good headphones and you're watching on a good screen, you're there, and then as you watch it numerous times, you can really let your eye wander around the frame as the slow-mo scenes are happening. You just pick up all kinds of really interesting little things, the sparkles and the colors and just the way things are interacting. And it's you're there. And that's the beauty of it. So they put the energy into it and it just totally draws you into the scene and you can really get immersed in it, as opposed to making it just kind of a throwaway, like this is the latest drug and it's taken over Mega City 1. And they could have gone that route. And I'm so glad they didn't.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I watched a YouTube review that was made when the movie came out. I think it was a Chris Stuckman review. So like a dude that's pretty big on YouTube for movie reviews. And he was like, I went and saw Dredd and I saw the trailer and it was the worst trailer I've ever seen in my fucking life. And I watched the movie and it was great. And so I was like, I'm going to watch the trailer. And the trailer was like, there's a new drug called slow-mo. It was exactly what you're saying. And I was like, oh man.
Really?
And it was like, Lena Headey is in charge of it and she's going to stop everybody. Like it just gave away like the whole thing. And it was exactly what you said, and it totally did ruin, the appeal. And it's,
it's too bad.
It is, but like, we didn't see the trailer, so who gives a shit? But, I like what you said in terms of them taking the time to create a visual for it, but I also liked that they took the time to integrate it into the plot with the skinning and tossing of the guys out into the shaft in the beginning of the film and then Lena Headey at the end of the film. So, it could have been a throwaway drug taking over Mega City, but it also could have just been like a nothing burger in terms of the plot and the fact that it became kind of a central element, even though it wasn't needed to, just to kind of add that more beautiful element to it was cool.
Yes. Well said, Sean.
Well, I think like there's an interesting segue here to a brief cul-de-sac of I think that the main reason why slow-mo was developed the way that it was is because this was a 3D movie. This was made when the 3D thing was all the rage.
Yeah, I kept seeing that in my readings about this movie, and I was like, 3D? Like, what? Who cares?
Because that was when it was a huge thing. Remember, like I remember, like Avatar was like 3D Avatar, and
I saw that.
Yeah, me too. I saw it at 3D IMAX, and like I just could give two fucks about 3D movies, but it was like gonna be the next big thing for a while.
I remember seeing something in 3D, and I was just like, snore. I think it was Tron Legacy, which came out around the same time, I think, right?
Yeah. I totally dropped the fucking ball because I only just realized that this movie was made for 3D, and we have a fucking 3D TV here.
No way.
Oh.
So I've since, bought a DVD copy of the 3D version, and we'll report back once I've seen it.
Oh, please do.
Oh, man.
But yeah.
I'm really afraid that Jarhigo is going to be like, dude, it was amazing. And now I'm going to be like, oh, Christ, I got to go out and get one of those.
Yeah, I mean, I would never, I think by coincidence, my flatmate, somebody that he knew through work or something, just had one they were going to get rid of. And we just ended up with it, So
Gee whiz. That sucks.
I think that's kind of a happy accident, though, because, I hadn't really thought about it, but it's super obvious that the main reason that slow-mo is a huge thing in the movie and used throughout the plot would definitely be the 3D allure.
Yeah, I want to see those shots in 3D. I'm sure that's pretty incredible.
I'm sure it is, too. Or at least I hope that it's pretty incredible, man. Yeah. Interesting. It's cool. It's cool that they didn't, use that as a hook for making or selling the movie, though, because other films have been done like that, and it's it's 3D and it's whatever.
No, I think that was the hook at the time. I think they really pushed it.
Well, I guess I get that, but that's not the locus of this film. You know what I mean? The film, you watch it in regular D, as I like to call it, and it's awesome. The story is great. That's what makes a great film, Good story. Good story can push a film all the way through, So that's all I'm going to say right there.
That's all I have to say about that, yeah.
Yeah, just to maybe put a bow on the slow-mo thing, I thought it was interesting that they, it's like any technology has a positive use, and then, there's something really awful you can do with it. So, of course, they immediately go to oh, yeah, give them some slow-mo, then skin them, then fucking throw them off the balcony.
Right?
To prolong their suffering. Jesus.
Right? I thought the three bodies hitting the deck were a pretty strong indicator of just how gory they were willing to go. Because you don't normally see that level of gore in movies in general, outside of hardcore horror, maybe.
Yeah.
Agree. And the level of the gore in this movie was pretty intense. From Anderson unloading, 10 or 12 rounds into that dude's head towards the end at point blank range, under the chin when she escapes, to the skinning, to the tech guy's eyes being cut out of his head. I mean, just there's so
General
much. Yeah, totally. I wasn't going to say that, but yeah, I wasn't going to go there yet.
You got to do the final order quote.
No, totally.
Which one?
The final order.
Oh God, that's stupid. Oh my God.
I love that was him. I totally didn't remember that he was in this.
All right, should we do a little Domhnall Gleeson?
Do it, man.
A little side jam here, cul-de-sac, whatever.
This is what we call a segue into talking about the cast.
I think so.
Yes, that's right. And we'll start it off with the final order. It would have been funny if Gleeson was doing all his tech stuff in the Bill Paxton voice, which I can't stop thinking about that now because of you two.
Oh.
Ma, we have a problem here. Judge Dredd is trying to enter the facility. This is a DEF CON war drill. Everyone needs to exit the premises. You must land your aircraft now.
Anyway, and I heard, I've always pronounced his name Domhnall Gleeson, and then I heard it pronounced Domhnall Gleeson the other day in a video, and I was like, that sounds way more right. Which is it? Do we know?
I've heard Domhnall Gleeson.
Domhnall, yeah, it's probably Domhnall.
Yeah, but it's spelled Domn, so it's...
It is Domnhllall. Anyway, son of excellent actor Brendan Gleeson, who's been in numerous films.
Is he the son of Brendan Gleeson? No shit.
He is the son of Brendan Gleeson. Yes, he is.
Wow.
Brendan Gleeson was, what's his name? Mad Moody in Harry Potter. He was in Mission Impossible and a zillion other things. Anyway, I wrote this as a note. I'm going to stick by this. I think this is the best thing I've seen Domhnall Gleeson in.
Yeah, you need to see AI. Not AI. You need to see, what was that one?
You just did. You just made it fly. I was about to say it, and then you made it fly out of my head.
Ex Machina.
Ex Machina. Thank you.
You got to see Ex Machina, dude.
Oh, I thought you were going to suggest seeing Rise of Papa Palpatine.
Oh, that classic. That chestnut.
Zing! Is that a death for me?
No, I brought up Star Wars first.
Yes.
But he is pretty damn solid in this, especially considering it's a bit part.
Yeah, no, he's really good.
He's really good. Okay, I haven't seen Ex Machina, but we've obviously seen him in Star Wars and a couple of other things, and I didn't know that this was him. So he kind of got more notoriety way after this film came out, it doesn't really look like him. And then going back and watching it, you know, I was like, this is really, really good. I really like that character. He does a really excellent job with that character. Just the kind of like squirmy worminess of him and just being so utterly embodied with fear all of the time because this woman is just preying on him and has preyed on him. He's just totally like beat down and submissive. And I just think he does a fantastic job of it. I can't stress that enough. Great American accent, like the whole Megillah, man.
Yeah.
He's just great.
He killed it.
And it doesn't even look like himself. Like I didn't even know it was him until I watched it. I don't know. I think it was a couple of months ago or maybe a year ago. And I was like, what?
Yeah. Even the effects on his eyes was really awesome, even though that had nothing to do with him. Just the character itself was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
He got the robot eyes. It was a risky operation, but it was worth it.
Good call.
Ben, are you positing that this is the fate of JP?
Ooh, it could be.
Because if JP grew his hair out and got the robot eyes,
Put some pink eyeliner on.
yeah, and his video game genius career ended, he could end up being sort of a techie for a drug lord
In a narcology. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly.
I am the law.
I'd like to kind of like come out of the cast cul-de-sac for a moment just to touch on the geography of the building. I thought was really cool. Just I really enjoyed, one, how tight the movie was in terms of plot, and two, the way they were able to achieve that tightness by having like a 5-minute intro that then they're locked in a building through the rest of the shows. It's very Die Hard, you know?
It's very Die Hard, yeah.
And the skyscraper having that central shaft and establishing right away that those three dudes get chucked down the central shaft. And, it immediately makes it crystal clear what's going on and the geography of the space that you're working in, and that Mama's up high and Dredd and Anderson enter in down low, and there's no need for any sort of titles because the name of the building's on the side of the building, and it's not like blah 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 200 stories exposition. And I just really enjoyed how concisely they were able to communicate exactly what needed to happen without having to go into huge amounts of detail.
That's a sign of some really great writing.
Yeah.
And you're right about that, because all of the things that you do need to know, those little details are explained perfectly by the characters as the story unfolds in a very organic way. That's great. Fun fact about the Mega Bloks is they were having a difficult time finding interiors for the Mega Bloks. They didn't want to build sets, so they found an outdoor space in Johannesburg. So it was basically, it had 3 walls and it had that look. So they just, used a little movie magic to make it 4 walls, and then there you have your Mega Blok right there.
Yeah, and I saw that too, and it was like they had a 3-walled structure, and then to get some of the shots, they ended up needing to shoot at night to avoid the sunlight stuff, which was an interesting use case, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and that's how they originally found it, was at night. It looked like it could be an interior, so they were like,
Like a shaft of a building. Talking about shaft.
He can do it.
Yeah, I'd just tag one little thing onto what you just said, Chad. And then I remember the first time seeing this, I was a little disappointed that, because Mega City 1 is like this, it's like a character in the overarching story. So I was a little disappointed that we didn't get to see a lot of it, Yeah. I totally understand why they did it the way they did it. And, despite the fact that it could have ended up feeling rather claustrophobic in an undesirable way, I think they did a really good job.
I wholeheartedly agree. I did think there were a lot of good establishing shots of the city. So you did get a sense of the scope, Ben, even if it didn't give you as much as you...
But it was like a teaser.
Right.
Right, as you wanted. I think it gave not enough to make it a character, but enough to give you a sense of the scope of the size of it.
Definitely. You get the gist of things, but it just, I was hoping for more like romping around the city on the Lawmaster and stuff like that. And it just wasn't what the movie was, that's what I went in hoping for, and that's not what I got. So I was a little disappointed the first time I saw it, but then I just kind of, I've since just been able to appreciate it for what it is and for how terrifically they did with the resources that they had, you know?
Yeah. And it really kind of plays back to that Garland, fact of 16 drafts discarded, then another whole draft discarded, and simplifying. Like it kind of, you get the feeling that he wanted to make more movies that probably would have gone all over, but just it fell apart due to shitty marketing and bad timing or whatever. So it's a real shame. And I suppose it really lends a lot of weight to the argument of they should develop a show or something because of just how awesome Mega City as a character is. Like it is kind of a shame they didn't take the time in this one, but I get why they didn't. So yeah, I agree.
Yes. Back to the cast.
Yes.
I am the law.
The casty stuff. I think it'd be worth talking about Anderson as a character and
Definitely.
actress, because I really think that she makes the film because she brings out so much in Dredd.
Well, she almost is the main character of the film.
Yeah.
Because Dredd doesn't change really. It's a subtle change, whereas she has a full arc.
Well, exactly. And it's almost like it's about Anderson and Dredd's her sidekick.
Yeah.
In the sense of the story.
Yeah, she's kind of your in to the world, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's her first day on the force, you know, so it's sort of like your first day on the force with her. Yeah. And just Olivia Thirlby was awesome. I really loved Anderson in this movie. And I was yeah.
Super capable actress. Excellent work. Can't stress that enough. This film, as I touched on earlier, we are big fans of strong women characters here on the EBD podcast, and this movie is absolutely up there in the top because you've got Lena Headey and you've got Thirlby, and they're both incredibly strong women, and you see that over and over again throughout the course of the story and the film. And Anderson, even in the beginning, you know, she's still very green, obviously, but she's not a wimp, and she's not in that like weepy woman sense, you know?
Yeah, the traditional bullshit. Yeah.
Which we hate, which I personally can't stand. And so you still, even though she's like nervous, adrenaline, like they're about to, you know, blow the first door open and go in, you know, she's still absolutely committed and willing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
She's not like, oh, you know? So, yeah, excellent character. And just the way that Garland weaves her story throughout the course of it is just great. There's a lot of empowering going on there. A lot of interesting, different dynamics happening to her.
To Anderson.
Yes. Well, I mean, if you think about her as a judge, right? So a woman as an authority figure, and then the whole interplay between her and Wood Harris, Kay, the prisoner, you know, especially with all the mind stuff and the weird rapey stuff, you know, like, you know, he tries to sort of mentally dominate her in that way. And then she very quickly turns the tables on him and shows him that she is, in fact, the one that is in charge. You know what I mean? Where it comes to the inside of their minds, you know? So that's an interesting, you know, interplay and commentary on male-female dynamics right there. You know, just her relationship with him during the course of dragging him all over that mega block, you know? In addition to her transformation from really a rookie to a judge from beginning to the end of the film.
Yeah, it's interesting in the sense that like she gets to the end and essentially walks out of the mega block being like, I failed, see you later, here's my badge, and just how Dredd, you know, gives her the pass is a great kind of exclamation point on the end of her arc. Like even at the end, she's just like, fuck, I fucked up, I'm out, you know, like I lost my service weapon, which brings me to what I was gonna mention seeing was there's like a subtle nod in the scene where she's inside Key or K or whatever that guy's name is, brain. K, where he's trying to psych her out, but she lets him shoot her multiple times with her service weapon, and how that was a really subtle way for her to convince him that he could shoot her with his service weapon, which is setting him up to get his arm blown off later, which I thought was super clever. So I like that little...
Wow.
I totally missed that, and I really liked seeing someone mention that. So it was almost like she had even more control over the situation than we thought, you know?
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, it was almost like just in case things get out of control, I'm going to plant this seed in his head kind of a thing. Yeah, that's cool, man. That's really cool.
Yeah, she's really got a lot of depth, and that's what's great about her as a character in this story. And it's a nod to Garland's writing. You don't we don't see a ton of strong female characters. I'm always happy when I do see them, and it's really great to see a man writing them and doing. It's hard for me to say what I think is a serviceable job of writing a female character.
At least attempting.
I'm not a woman. Well, attempting to. Yeah, I'm not a woman,
Yeah.
so I can't really make that commentary. But in my opinion, I think he does a good job.
Yeah, I posted on our Facebook a link to a TED Talk video that I thought was really interesting. That's about teaching our boys how to be men through cinema, and it was talking a lot about a lot of this. Where he was saying that he showed his daughters, Star Wars, or his daughter Star Wars, and what she thought of it, and he was talking about the tropes of how women are treated like shit in terms of the Bechdel test, which is like, is there more than one woman in the movie, and if so, do they talk to each other, and if so, do they talk to each other about something other than the love interest, and if all of those things are true, it passes the Bechdel test, and it's like this really interesting viewpoint. And
Very much so.
And in that same vein, he was saying that one of the most important things that he feels is how can we raise our boys to be more understanding of how much of a bullshit situation it is to treat girls and women like they're subservient, is by giving, boys or men female characters to look up to. And I really feel like Anderson in this movie, you kind of are like, you totally vibe with her. And I think you're right, Ben, that, you're the first day on the job just like she is, and she's so solid that you do end up really feeling close to her, and you do kind of take her on as an avatar. And so the fact that like a male viewer can watch this and be like super pumped and like right on board alongside her,
Absolutely.
it does a service to what you're saying, Cav, of like, Garland is able to write in such a way that as a male viewer, you're like super stoked about her, and you kind of put yourself in her shoes, and having characters where you can put yourself in a female character's shoes is a service to, the three-dimensionality of the female character. And so I really think it speaks to that.
Wow. Yeah. Well said, dude. That is very cool.
I would highly recommend you check out the TED Talk video. It's cool. It's like 10 minutes long.
I would love to watch it.
I have one other thing on Anderson.
Please.
I'm sure we're not quite done yet, but I mentioned it earlier with Anderson as a sidekick bringing out more of Dredd than if he was solo, and I really feel like she's the linchpin, because if there wasn't a sidekick, Dredd would just walk in and just shoot everybody and save the day, and it would just be a boring action movie. But because she's there, and he's not protective of her, but he's kind of like driver's ed testing her the whole time. And the opening scene where he's like, she's a fail. She failed, so she failed. And the boss is like, give her a shot. The fact that he stays juggernaut, freight train, nothing changes until the very end where he passes her. Like, it's a very subtle but interesting nod to like a very subtle change in Dredd that is only possible because of Anderson. So
Right. Yeah, Mr. By the Rules breaks the rules, right?
yeah, exactly.
Well, Mr. By the Rules sees that there's another direction.
Yeah.
Or that there are instances where things have to be massaged or bent,
Yeah. And her freeing General Hux was the moment that he chose to give her a pass, I think.
Yeah. It's very undread, though, like it does not fit with the character at all. But it's interesting in the context of the movie for sure to give him, to make him more than that robot I was talking about earlier, to give him some depth, some agency sort of, otherwise he's just very one-dimensional.
I think though, even though that is very out of character for him, Ben, I find it amazing that they somehow made it fit him. If that's even possible to say. Like, in the scope of what you're saying, I feel like the way that they did it made it fit his character.
Well, sure. I mean, you're really invested in Anderson by the end of the movie, and you're like, no, come on, man, don't be a dick now,
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not just that, though. It's like through the various events in the story and through his tutelage and his driver's ed teacher kind of thing, he kind of forces her to elevate up. And really, at the end, she shows him that she does know the law very well and was operating within the constraints of the law, which is Dredd's world is operating within the confines and the constraints of the law. So it's almost like through, like in this sort of like roundabout kind of path, she kind of elevates up exactly to his level because she is operating within the same constraints as him in what she's doing, you know? And I think that he respects that. That's what I get from that, is that I see that. He asks her exactly 3 times in the film, "Are you ready?" You know, and the last one is great.
Yeah.
You know, she's like, "Let's finish this," or "Let's wrap this up," or whatever. And
Yeah.
he has the most subtle look on his face. It's hardly any expression at all. And you can see that he's just like, okay, I guess you're running the show now, you know, like it's very cool. Like when I said, you know, what's your favorite scene, 2 favorite scenes. That's one of them for me, is that little switch right there, you know, where he's like grilling her, you know, he's a perp. What are you doing? You know, that's punishable by death. And then she like lays it out.
Yeah. I've already lost my service weapon, so I'm already failed.
Well, right, but she's still working within the confines of the law, like to the atom, man. You know what I mean? That's the part of it that's part of what I'm that I'm positing here. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
she's so within the confines of the law. She says, "I already got the fail when I lost my service weapon, but until the end of this assessment, I am still authorized to dispense justice." And that's what I did by letting him go. And then she basically just walks out of the room and says, like, "All right, let's finish this."
Yeah. And it's subtle, too, because she choosing that particular judgment in that moment, in my opinion, clearly is the reason that he passed her. But in so many other movies, he would have passed her because, like, in any other universe that isn't Judge Dredd, the old grizzled cop would have appreciated her and brought her into the fraternity of cops when she saved his ass. But Judge Dredd doesn't give a fuck about the fact that she saved his ass. She's being passed because of that particular judgment. So I like that subtlety.
Exactly. Yes.
Because it could have so easily gone the other way, and you're like, oh, she saved his ass, so he passed her, and it would have just been a much more flat kind of climax.
No, it's almost as if in that moment he sees, because she can sense what's happened to Domhnall Gleeson's character, that he was a victim. It's almost as if he sees that she's going to bring something to the force that he couldn't, you know, like he would have just killed him.
Yeah, interesting.
So, you know, it's almost as if he's like, maybe we could use this, you know?
That's super interesting. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. I love talking about Anderson. She's a great character. There's so much there to talk about too, and really her and Lena Headey. I mean, can we just switch to her for a second?
Yeah,
or do you guys have anything else on Anderson?
Sure.
No, that's great.
I am the law.
So you want to talk about another strong female character? She's the leader of the gang, and I mean, firstly, Lena Headey is a super capable actress, and when you watch this movie, there are times when you really see that. Like, I mean, really, really see it. I mean, she does a great performance, but when you watch it a couple of other times, you can really kind of take your time and look at some of the details of what she's doing. Like, you really, really see how good she is. And she's just downright scary in this movie. And so, again, to see another female character with that kind of empowerment, like, she is running that show. And like the medical guy says, like, her trademark is violence. It's like, you see it again and again during the course of the story, or as the story unfolds, and she's just scary. As soon as he says she feminized the guy with her teeth, like, I was like, oh my God. Like that right there is like, it's brutal. There's a brutality to that's scary, man. And she's scary in this.
But it's a brutality that's in response to her treatment, which I particularly like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I like that as well. You know what I mean? So it's like, I like it in the sense that that's her response to it. And it's like, great. And then at the same time, it's like, it's scary in its brutality when you look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, Lena Headey did a really great job. You know, the character of Mama is not unhinged, is not like, not even necessarily unreasonable, you know? She's just very calm and very menacing.
And calculating, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the better movie villains I'd seen in a long time. Like, she's just so good.
No doubt.
Especially when the plot unfolds to the point where she's responsible for slow-mo and the main production is in the building. Like, until then, it's just kind of like, oh, she's just a badass gang leader who gets shit done. But then when you realize just how much she has at stake, it makes it so much more clear why she's willing to go that far, and it really adds a lot of weight to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. You can also see someone brought up in a video that I watched that she hates her life, and when she gets thrown off, she's happy because it's finally over. And
yeah, she looks relieved.
Yeah, I could see that. And the other thing too that I saw, it was super subtle, but you can see when Dredd takes Caleb and throws him off the side, like she looks scared.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting dichotomy of her being so empowered and powerful and brutal and scary, and then, you know, her right-hand man, who is a man, gets chucked over the side by Dredd, and now all of a sudden she's scared.
It's like the first moment where she's like, well, maybe I don't have this under control. Fuck.
Exactly.
Moment, yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And of course it's after the Gatling gun scene, which I think everybody was certain that she was certain that was going to get him.
Yeah. Yeah, when you mentioned, you know, the biggest and best and favorite scenes, him, Dredd throwing Caleb and then turning around and walking into that cloud of dust is just a great shot.
That is a really great shot.
Just my quick 2 cents on Lena Headey. I loved her in 300 as the Queen. I thought she was a badass in that, and in a way, like, she did an awesome job with Cersei Lannister in Game of Thrones, but in a way,
oh my god,
because of how much Cersei Lannister there was, it's almost tainted my view of her. Not as an actor, she's a very talented actor, but it's getting to the point where like all I see is Cersei Lannister, whereas there's so many subtleties to all of the stuff that she's played. So,
you know, until you mentioned Cersei, I had forgotten about that actually, and I kept thinking about 300 and the Purge, actually.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if I've seen the Purge, but 300, like, she's just such a fucking badass alongside Gerard Butler, and
totally.
And I mean, it's a bit more of a tropey, traditional, like she's a sidekick, traditional woman-y kind of role in a way, whereas this isn't.
Yeah.
But, like, it's more so than this, obviously, but
yeah, but she seems to make good choices, Chad, and I feel like the choices she makes with the roles she picks are. She doesn't pick a lot of women like that, you know, like I agree that like, you know, she was more of like Gerard Butler's equal, you know what I mean? And like that was a strong woman as well. And ditto in the Purge, like the Purge, I don't know if you've ever seen any of those. It's an interesting premise, but she plays Ethan Hawke's wife and she doesn't roll the typical, like, I'm an American suburban housewife. Like it's not like that. So that's why I thought about that and 300 and not Cersei. Anyway.
Well, I know what you're saying about Cersei, Chad, but also, man, she's so good as Cersei.
yeah, definitely.
You have a character who is like despicable in every way. Like everybody hates Cersei, but at the same time, she plays it with a way where you kind of like. You can identify with her a little bit, you know, and you almost sort of root for her sometimes because she's really, Cersei is despicable, but she's motivated by, you know, trying to protect her family. So she does it, and she just does a great job of like melding those two things, you know?
Definitely. And in a way, this is, you know, Mama trying to protect her turf, and there is a certain level of justification for her behavior considering the manufacturing of slow-mo in the building and whatnot. So it's a
sure.
Yeah, she's a super powerful and strong character, no doubt. And that's an interesting point you make with her being happy to be chucked out at the end. I hadn't really considered that.
What about her?
Her being happy that it's over.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I saw talking about the ending was like where Anderson chooses to let Domhnall Gleeson go, Dredd chooses not to let Mama go, and Mama is a product of horrific abuse, you know, like, so in a way she was passing that abuse down onto Domhnall Gleeson, similar to kind of how abusive relationships tend to, you know, be generational or whatnot. So, you know, she got a ration of shit and scarred up and cut up by her pimp, and so like, you know, and Anderson might have had sympathy for Mama, even though Dredd didn't. And so it's kind of an interesting dichotomy.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Final thought on Anderson. I really like that Anderson is the one that chooses Peachtree, where like they jump on the motorcycle out front of Justice, and he's like, "Okay, rookie, what are we doing?" And she's like, "Peach trees," and like the whole thing is just based on that one decision.
Huh. Interesting. Very cool.
You all right, Kev?
You with us? Are you reading about Sarah Connor Chronicles?
feel like your enthusiasm level just went down. Like,
No, I just said it was interesting. Very cool.
someone pissed in your cornflakes.
No, I was just reading about Headey for a second. So yes, ejection death. All right, fine, I admit it.
Busted. It sounded like an injection. I could hear the wind, you know?
I could hear the clicking of the cockpit.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on cast besides the elephant in the room?
We got to talk about Karl Urban, guys.
I don't know. No other really cast. I mean, Wood Harris was great. The guy that played Caleb was great. Everybody was great.
Yeah.
Everybody's super capable in this movie. You know, this is not. I really like the chief judge a lot too. She was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was great.
Judge Lex, he was great. You know, I don't know. Karl Urban. I mean, I don't know. Do we even go there? What?
Since the beginning of this show, we've been talking, you in particular have been talking about how much you love Karl Urban, and this is the first Karl Urban movie. I think you need to speak about him, at least for a moment.
It's not the first Karl Urban movie.
Well, it's the first major Karl Urban starring movie. Like, he was a sidekick in Ragnarok, for example.
True.
And he was he kind of was pretty solid in Riddick, so that's fair.
And he was in The Boys.
Chad,
Yes,
every movie that Karl Urban is in is a Karl Urban movie.
this is true.
Thank you. Or a Karl Urban series.
Whether he is the main character or a supporting cast,
Yeah,
it's always a Karl Urban movie.
that's fair, but at the same time, he's like a number one in this, so I kind of feel like he deserves a bit of special loving. But if you guys don't want to talk about someone that you love, that's fine.
Well, no, I just thought we could gloss it and save it for the Karl Urban Spectacular or whatever the hell that is. I don't even know what that is anymore. But
Considering that 2 years later, we still haven't done any spectaculars because every time we try to, it's like it's too big.
I think the Karl Urban Spectacular is ongoing.
Yeah, exactly.
it is okay. It's ongoing, and then we'll just sort of we'll piece it together in one show later.
Yes.
Right?
The best of Karl Urban.
Okay.
Friend of the show.
All right. Somebody else start talking about Karl Urban.
He's swell.
Great lead off.
Okay, this movie made me think he could be a great Batman, and you disagreed with me, Kev.
Oh, I like he.
I did? When did I say that?
I think it was when Affleck started playing Batman, and I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know why they didn't go for Karl Urban. I think he would have been great. And you're like, I don't think he's the right kind of guy. Like, he could play Batman, but I don't think he'd be a good Bruce Wayne. And
You know what? I'm stupid. That was stupid, and I'm annoyed that I said that now because now I disagree with myself. That was stupid. I don't know why I said that. Maybe at the time I thought like, I don't know. I disagree with myself. Thank you for bringing that up because now I hate myself, and I do wish Karl Urban would play Batman because he is perfect.
oh, man.
He is perfect.
This movie is like, it's like a test bed for it because he got so much fucking expression out of the lower half of his face in this that, like, come on. It's just so good.
And the fact that his ego didn't get in the way like Stallone's did in demanding to take the mask off. Like,
Yes.
he clearly is invested in the character as a result of the fact that he wasn't going to whinge about it and made the most out of what he needed to do with the lower half of his face.
Yeah, you're right. He never takes it off in the comics. Why should he take it off here?
Yeah, precisely.
Little Mandalorian parallel there.
I still think they shouldn't have taken Mandalorian's helmet off in season 1, but that's just a nitpicky bullshit comment from me, from the cheap seats.
But we get to see it at the end of season 1, right?
Yeah, which I think we shouldn't have, personally.
Yeah.
But this isn't a show about the Mandalorian.
No, it's not.
No, this is now a show about Karl Urban.
You're going to begrudgingly talk about Karl Urban. You're like, fine, we'll talk about Karl Urban.
I just think that Karl Urban he makes really interesting choices in his roles, in the things that he goes after. And he's just so capable. And he puts a lot of time and a lot of energy into every single role that he does. And it really shows on screen. Like, okay, so here's a commentary about Batman. He should play Batman. And he's an ideal person to play Batman. I don't know what I was thinking when I said that before. I clearly was either out of my mind or I was in a different headspace. But I've since flip-flopped, and I'm glad you brought that up because I do think he could play a good Batman. The problem is that he's not popular enough to play Batman. You know, like he's not as well known as an actor, which is amazing because The Boys is super popular. His turn as McCoy in Star Trek was easily the best character in the entire franchise.
Oh, yeah.
The way that he took the affectation that DeForest Kelley used in his voice and just added that in to his own interpretation was freaking brilliant, man. And I think people loved it. I did.
I definitely did, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Eomer, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, Eomer, Lord of the Rings. That was the first thing I think I saw him in. And that was, you know, but the whole Star Trek thing that was huge. That was a huge part in an iconic series, man. And why he doesn't have more notoriety is sort of mystifies me. But that's why I think he wouldn't end up playing Batman, is because of that stupid reason alone. But you know what? That's fine. I would rather that he was like, you know, the amazing actor that he is, and he's not like a Denzel level celebrity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's a friend of our show.
He is certainly a friend of our show.
We're his friend. He's not our friend, but we're his friend. Right, Ben?
We're here to help elevate the perception of Karl Urban and to make everybody aware of how awesome he is.
Yeah,
just who he
exactly,
is.
man.
You guys may not have heard of Karl Urban, but let us introduce you.
Yes, let us take you on a journey of Karl Urban. I mean, look at what was his name in Ragnarok? Crud or Skrull or what the hell was it?
Scourge.
Crud. Scourge. From Scourge to Dredd to Bones McCoy.
Vaco.
I don't know if you guys have Vaco. Hello. Have you seen Pathfinder? I'm pretty sure Ben has seen that with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pathfinder was definitely cool.
Born Supremacy.
Yeah, exactly. Born Supremacy. What else? I mean, his list of credits is lengthy. The Boys, duh.
Yeah, Billy Butcher, man.
Billy Butcher was great.
Billy Butcher is great.
Yeah, Eomer, exactly. I loved him as Eomer. That was my first introduction to him. And just a fun fact, he was on Xena Warrior Princess.
Whee!
Exactly. Doom. He was great in Doom.
Everybody Kevs.
I'm trying not to interrupt the Everybody Kev section.
It's not going to blow. I'm done. Go ahead, Ben.
You're done because you read them all, mate.
But so I think he did a really good job with Dredd. I think he played it. He didn't, he brought all the right stuff to it. He played it subtle. He had great physicality about him. Like I said, you got tons of amazing expression out of just using the lower half of his face in that mask. Like, I think, much like the way the design, the production design and the way they did the armor and the guns and the motorcycles and all the gear and stuff, like, I think his performance kind of reflected that, like he could have played it really schlocky and over the top, but he didn't. He did a very almost like perfect mirror to Mama, like, just like a subtle menacing quality to him that was really good. His little monologue to Peachtree over the intercom is just fucking great, man. So kudos to Karl Urban for bringing it, man. He brings it every time.
He really does.
Absolutely, man. Regrettably, I just looked this up. Okay, so you want to give me another ejection death, fine, but here's the thing. I'm going to write that down.
Ben, I agree with everything I just didn't listen to you say. So anyways.
Oh, fuck.
All right, this may be shocking. It may be. I hope it won't be a scar on the whatever of Karl Urban, but he was in Star Wars: The Rise of Papa Palpatine.
Was he?
Yes, listed as additional voices.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it'd be interesting to know what that actually was.
Maybe Karl Urban was one of the referees in Over the Top, and he was one of the referees in the bleachers.
That's what I was thinking. That like maybe he was one of the Sith voices.
Yeah, he's a Sith referee.
The Sith arm wrestling referees.
Maybe he ADR'd that famous line from Rise of Papa Palpatine. The final order.
It does kind of sound like him.
It could be.
Karl Urban is, in fact, Papa Palpatine. I like it.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, if anybody knows, please tell us in the comments section. I am the law.
So why don't we let's talk about some, why don't we each throw out a one or two just memorable Dredd moments where Karl Urban's acting acumen really just shone through. How about that?
Favorite lines and stuff?
Well, I was really just kind of trying to keep the spotlight on Karl Urban for a second, but yeah, sure.
I love the Anderson. Sir, with backup inbound, I think we should wait until the odds have shifted in our favor. Dredd says nothing. Wrong answer? You're the psychic. I love that bit.
Yeah.
That is good.
I really enjoy the scene where he's being hunted by the other judges, and it's after he gets shot, and there's that one judge there, and he's just like, he's about to shoot him, and he goes, wait, and then the dude starts monologuing and gets shot. Like, I just love that part. Like, it's just kind of, I know it's kind of tropey, but like, there's bound to be some one-liners in a Dredd movie, and that's definitely one of them.
Yeah, the fact that it's tropey is what I enjoyed. I thought that the fact that it was tropey was kind of the punchline in a way.
Yeah, it was self-aware.
Yeah. To go back to your satire in the comic, that's a good example of self-aware satire for sure.
Yeah, and then I always loved the hot shot thing.
Yeah,
for whatever reason.
Yeah, no, that hot shot thing is great. I thought it was great too.
That hot shot thing's very Bond-esque, in a way.
It's not very believable, but it was just fun,
What, watching a guy's face melt from the inside out? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. But also the confusion of the guy that's holding the hostage, he's like, okay, hot shot. And he's like, what? He's like, I said hot shot.
And then to hear that loading sound, you're like, oh yeah. This dude's gonna get it, man.
Absolutely.
I am the law.
Charlie Ego's gotta bring Stallone in. It's like Stallone has been featured in every episode for the last 2 months. I love it.
Well, I love my dad.
I love my dad.
I love him.
So did you like this better than your dad's version?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember my initial reaction to my dad's version. I imagine it was a yawn fest. That said, I'm a huge fan of Demolition Man, so it wouldn't surprise me if I liked the schlock factor, considering that it probably was my introduction to Dredd.
Well, they came out a year apart, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're kind of really similar plot lines, too.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have any other scenes, really, that come to mind.
The only other scene, if we're kind of veering away from Karl Urban, that I like is, I just like when they're in that, access corridor, and he rolls the stun grenade out, and he goes on the PA and says, you have 20 seconds to comply, and the guy that's sort of leading that little squad of gang members is like, there's 10 of us and 2 of you. You come out of that corridor, we're going to waste you. He goes, you have 10 seconds to comply. And the guy says, fuck you, judge. You got 5. I love that, man. Because it's so non-typical. It's so non-typical of the bad guys saying crappy cliche lines. There's an intent there that, they're really getting after it. And I think in that moment, you don't necessarily know what's going to happen. And that's why I like that line. It's like you guys always say, the guy delivers it with such confidence that he sells me on it. And that's why it's great.
I love it.
No, it's true. It's really true. I really like that line
good.
because of that.
It's good writing.
Yeah, it is. It's great writing.
Like you said, any number of schlocky things could have come out of his mouth at that moment. But, there it was.
Yeah.
The only other thing I would have maybe added would be, Dredd's gambit with Mama's, explosive triggering device. And you're kind of like, holy fuck, dude, you're really gambling there that's going to work. But like after everything's over, like his reaction is very like, it's almost like he had encountered that before or something. He's just like, yeah, that's what I thought would happen.
Told you so.
Yeah.
Yeah. It shows what it's like to live in that place, meaning Mega City 1.
In terms of what, like the devaluing of life or what?
Well, it's just the crime is so rampant and everything is just, it's such a violent place and it's just commonplace, So like Ben said, it's almost like he knew the second she said, oh, if this is attached to my heartbeat, if this stops, this whole place blows and then the whole block goes and then you're dead too. And he's just like, yep, been there, done that. I'm going to just check you over here. We'll see what happens.
It's like, fuck it. Let's see what happens.
Exactly. But I think he knew.
But there's it's a subtle little, when they cut back to him after she hits the ground, he's just kind of like,
he like grunts,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's like,
yep. He's not like, whew, or,
yeah.
It's just like, that's what I fucking thought,
It's totally like the opposite of your standard bomb countdown, cut the red wire, 3, 2, 1 bullshit. He's just like, meh.
Right.
It's perfect.
Yeah. When he deals with the guy who he puts the hot shot in his mouth, when he's describing to Anderson as they're walking to their bikes, what needs to happen on the assessment. When he talks to the chief judge at the end and she walks up and she's like, you look like you've been through it. And he's like, the perps were uncooperative. Like he totally downplays it. Like, this is just another day in the life. Like a situation like that is pretty normal for him,
Yeah, for sure. The hot shot scene too, it just like blows the guy's head off or whatever. And then there's just blood everywhere, bodies everywhere. I've got a body for recyc. And then as he's walking out, the like person comes on the PA and it's like, the food court will open in 30 minutes. It's just like, that's cold, man.
Exactly.
You're just going to like sweep up the bodies and then you can go back and get some noodles if you want.
With that little floor Zamboni, yeah.
Yeah. It perfectly shows just how little anyone gives a shit about the violence.
Yeah, it's very, very downplayed throughout the course of it. Even the guy getting hit in the very beginning, he gets hit by the van as they're trying to get away from Dredd. It's just so, there's such an utter disregard for human life in this world, and, you see that with Mama too, she's like, we're hunting these judges, everybody stay out of the way. And then she puts the 2 Gatling guns on the one level and it's like, she didn't really care what happens. As long as she kills the judge, so she doesn't care about the other human life. She doesn't even care if she destroys the building to the point that it starts collapsing, my God.
Yeah.
Can I propose that when we make Gleaming the Turd a Christmas Razor Scooter movie, that at one point we're all hanging out on a half-pipe ramp and like chilling in the evening in the city and Judge Dredd jumps down and busts out and lands on our ramp for a minute? I think that would be amazing.
That would be sick. So anything else in this film?
Nah. Nuggets, deaths, ratings.
NDR, baby. I am the law.
Oh, I have one. Maybe I'll just have it be a nugget, but did you guys see that similar to a Tombstone or a Cobra that Karl Urban said that Garland essentially was the shadow director of the movie and the studio stopped the director from editing? They banned him from the editing suite?
He was banned from the editing and then he was overseeing the film. Karl Urban has stated on numerous occasions that he considers this Garland's directorial debut.
Which was interesting, for sure.
Very much so. But despite that, however much Travis did of the shooting, there's plenty to love about the direction in this film.
You guys got any nuggets?
I don't have any.
I did, and I forgot all of them.
Good story.
I know, right? Great story. Good job, man. You get an A today.
I've got one traditional nugget and then a couple of items that we didn't touch on. One that I think is worth just mentioning in case anyone else is like, why didn't you talk about it, is this was created at almost exactly the same time as The Raid, the Indonesian movie that's very, very similar in terms of taking place in a building.
Yes, I own a copy of that. It's very good.
There's just a comment from Garland being like they were in development at the same time, so essentially plagiarism wasn't possible. And the studio that put this out went bankrupt, and it delayed the release of Dredd, so it made it look like Dredd came out after The Raid, and therefore a lot of people were like, it's just like The Raid, but it's worth saying that they were made in parallel and have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah, that's a good one. I read that as well.
Do you know who is also a friend of the show that auditioned for the role of Dredd?
I do not. Paul Rudd?
Close. Michael Biehn auditioned to play Dredd.
Michael Biehn?
He did.
Wow.
So we touched on the fact that he hasn't gotten much love in the last couple of episodes, and he had a shot at this one, and it would have been interesting in a way.
Very much so.
Yeah, I think you would be an interesting pick for sure.
So that's my traditional nugget. And then my final thought that's kind of a nugget, but I'm just going to shoehorn it in here anyway, is whether or not you guys were aware of the organization that, is in charge of the judges is called the Justice Department. And it turns out that in the comics, the Justice Department essentially performs for lack of a better term, military coup and takes over the country. And the Justice Department and the judges run the entire country. And I never really knew that they were essentially the head of state. I kind of always assumed they were a branch of government as opposed to the government. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
Wow. That is very interesting.
And I suppose if you'd read the comics, you probably knew that, but I never read them enough to know that. So I thought that was cool.
No, I didn't either. I'm really disappointed. I had a couple of little nugs, and I can't remember what they were now. Anyway, well, good nuggets, Chad. Thanks. Everybody, that was Chad with nuggets.
Deaths.
I am the law.
Deaths. I got 4 cataloged here in the death record of the day.
The Deathatron 9000.
That would be your Schneider as Will Teasel. great situation. I'd love to see that, and then you started taking it either too far or to another dimension, and then you died.
Yep.
And then your second was a Star Wars death.
Yep, traditional.
A traditional, nondescript Star Wars death.
For a movie we all really hated, The Rise of Palpatine just gets brought up so frequently. It's like almost impossible not to draw some comparison, like in any episode.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
All right, so Ben had no deaths.
Boo.
Is it no? And I had just 2 ejection deaths. One on Lena Headey. I read that too, by the way. That should have been one of my nuggets, I guess. Is that it's pronounced Headey, not Headey.
Headey. Okay.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go. Is there such a thing as a pedantic nugget? Because I like it.
There is now. And then my other ejection death was on Karl Urban.
Yeah, you ejected from your own podcast to avoid talking about one of your favorite people ever.
Didn't I bring up the Domhnall Gleeson Final Order thing?
Yeah, I think I beat you to Star Wars though, so we were talking about
you did?
first past the post. But if you want to take one, go for it, mate.
I thought that was what got the ball rolling, but never. Anyways, I don't know. I could be wrong.
It could have been. I know my Star Wars mention was not the first, so I didn't die.
Someone will let us know.
Let's move on to ratings.
I know it's been a couple weeks now since I've done the improbability drive, but I really couldn't think of anything for this one. I've been thinking about it all week, and I kept trying to think about it during the episode without having an ejection death, and I'm just coming up really blank.
So you're a talking couch, in other words?
I feel like a sofa.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
I do.
Could be like a full clip of Hot Shots.
Yeah, see, I mean,
No.
it's all right, but, I don't know.
We're always trying to like either predict what you're going to say or like I'll try to come up with something that I hope would be as cool as something that you would come up with.
The beauty of it whenever we try and guess is, Ben, you have exactly the same reaction as Dredd when he throws Lena Headey out the window, or he's like, just grunts at the end. He's like, yeah, nah. Nah, it's not what I would have done.
Exactly, man.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I would say something like it was a perfect high X headshot.
There you go.
Yeah. Now after all that, though, I'm not really feeling it.
Don't shit on Benny's Improbability Drive.
I'm kidding. Oh my god. Well, I've already extolled the virtues of this film. Oh wait, hold on. So what is that? Where does that leave Jarhigo?
I think a perfect high X headshot sums it up. Very good.
I love how haiku they're becoming. You're becoming a perfect minimalist. That was fantastic. Well, let's hear it, Kev. I'll go last.
We doing. I say this every time. Numbers or letters? You know what? I'm gonna possible EBD first. This movie gets a 10.
All right.
10.
Wow.
There's nothing I don't like about it. It's that good, and I wish they made more of them.
Well, allow me to kick it down a notch.
Here we go.
No, like 5 notches. I mean,
I like the movie. It's good. I like the idea of Dredd and what I've learned about, the 2000 AD comic, cultural phenomenon. The movie's good. Like, I enjoyed it. It's got its moments. It's kind of falling similar to my previous opinions on Riddick, where I discussed how, like, it didn't quite grab me as thoroughly at first as it did upon multiple viewings. So maybe this is the same, but it's a good movie. It's not a great movie because it's such a traditional, almost comic book, single issue, adventure-y, simple story. It doesn't really blow me away, but I enjoyed it. So in terms of where it ends up on the algorithm, it's a 5. It's in the neighborhood of a Temple of Doom. I think I preferred First Blood to be honest. So First Blood's a little bit further up. John Wick's a little bit further down. So it's in good company. But it's a good movie. 5.0. And I'm sorry that I gave it half the rating you did, Kev. I'm sure you're just like, fuck you, man.
I'm just, disappointed.
I think I would be disappointed if you didn't attempt to eviscerate it, Chad. So
yeah, you're right, actually.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I didn't hate it at all. I enjoyed it. But it's that pesky algorithm, man.
Damn algorithm. It's the algorithm's fault.
But I feel like Dredd, like sometimes, he has to follow the law to the T. I have to follow the algorithm to the T, and I just headshot the movie. I just executed the motherfucker. What can I say?
The sentence is 5.
Exactly. I've got the improbability drive this week, and the sentence is 5.
There you go. Algorithm, what do we have going on for the next show?
We are popping our Steven Seagal cherry next week with Out for Justice.
Oh, yes. It is just a dreadful masterpiece.
Pun intended.
Pun intended.
Yeah, it's a real piece of work. So get psyched for that, folks. Sure to be some good laughs in that one. For all of us, from all of us, to all of you, we just like to say thanks so much for joining us this week on the EBD podcast, and we'll see you next time. So long.
Bye. Bye-bye.
That's going to wrap up this week's show, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in to listening to us talk about one of our favorite films, Dredd, starring Karl Urban. Stay tuned next week as we talk about the super amazing cinematic masterpiece, Out for Justice, starring Steven Seagal. Sure to be a good time. If you'd like to support the show, folks, there's a couple great ways you can do that. You can always rate us and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, Podcast Republic, any one of those places that you may get your podcast muffin tops. You can also tell a friend to check out the show. It is the most effective way to spread the word of the show. You can ask us questions using our email, contact@ebd.fm, or on Twitter @AskEBD. You can find me at Mulverine on Twitter. You can find Ben at Jarhigo on Twitter, and Chad at ChadNormal on Twitter. You can find the show notes for today's episode in your podcast app of choice, or at our website, ebd.fm/episodes/61. Thanks so much for joining us this week, folks, and we'll see you next time.
be British tar.
I am the law.
Oh, it'd be great if you started singing British tar in that voice.
Hey, British tar.
As free as a mountain bird. His energetic fist should be ready to resist a dictatorial word. His nose should pet and his lips should curl. His cheeks should flame and his
Brows should furl, his bosom should heave, and his heart should glow. And his fist be ever ready for a knockdown blow.
Oh, man. Whee!